The wind came down from the mountains with a sharp cruelty that descended, carrying the pommes of a hard winter. Thomas Mercier stood at the window of his study, watching clouds settle over the Forzen water below like a heavy shroud. The town lay beneath him, a scatté of worn buildings and steep roads holding their breath against the cold. Thomas had lived here all his life. 43 years of watching seasons change and people either leave or settle enter the slow rhythm of hardship that defined this place. Christmas was 2 weeks away. The thought pressed against his chest like a stone. For 5 years he had let the day pass without notice. No tree, no décoration, no effort to portant joy still lived in his ooze. Mrs. Calloway at the Mercantile had stopped asking why. The veuve no longer invited him to chercher dîner. In a small town, people learned when silence was kinder than question. This year felt deep. Maybe it was the letter from his brother in Dalve filled with talk of family and forgiveness. Maybe it was simply that a man could not live alone with ghost forever. Without telling anyone, Thomas placed our avertissement in the paper. Cook wanted for Christmas dîner. One day only, fait, he expected no answer. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. It was light and Carfil. When Thomas opened the door, a young woman stood o'er his porch, a bundle wrapped in blanket held claws to her chest. She looked thin in the way that spoke of her hardship. Dark hair pulled tight from a tired face. A coat stitched and mended more than us, boots worn nearly through at the toes. Monsieur, merci, she said. Her voice was steady despite the cold. I've come about the work for Christmas dîner. Thomas should have asked her name, her expérience, but his eyes were drawn to the bundle she carried. The blanket shifted, and a small face appeared, a baby no more than a few months old. The child's eyes opened, unfocused at first, then fixed on Thomas. They were gris bleu, the color of winter sky before snow. Something perfil and arcy stirred in his chest. The woman was speaking again. I can cook, sir. I've worked for ranch and family. I can give her France if needed. I'm new to Stillwater. She paused. Me name is Sahab Penah, Mrs. Penah, a widow, young and alone with a baby. The town would already be watching her. Thomas cleared his throat. The work is only for Christmas Day. I'll provide suppli. The pair is $10. Her eyes widened. It was Jean-Hu, tout Jean-Hu. I accept, she said. He should have turned her away. Should have noticed the danger in those eyes, not the woman's, but the baby. But he was tired of silence. Come at dawn or Christmas Day, he said. She nodded and left. Thomas watched her walk away, growing smalé against the galard. When he closed the door, the ooze felt less empty than before. That night, he came uninvited. He sat alone with a lamp burning low as snow began to fall outside. Emma had been born in spring. That was what returned first. His wife, Katine, had labored through the night while he paced the hallway. When dawn came, so did his daughter. Small, loud, Alive. Katine had held her with confidence and whispered, "Look at her eyes, gris bleu just like the baby or his posh. They were given only 2 years. The feve came in winter, cruel and fast." Emma died first. Katine followed 3 days later. Thomas buried them side by side behind the church. Since then, he had lived carefully, kitly, never allowing memory to pull him under. But tonight he walked through rooms law closed. He opened the bedroom upstairs. Moonlight revealed dust and stillness. Emma's cradle stood in the corner. He lifted the small blue kilt inside and held it close, though time had stolen every tassofs. He carried the kilt downstairs and led it over the back of the sofa. Outside, snow fell in soft silence. Christmas was 10 days away. The days passed in a strange bleu. Thomas cleaned rooms untouched for years. He bought food from the Mercantile. Mrs. Calloway watched but did not ask. On Christmas Eve, he met Sahab Penah in town. She told him her husband had died in our accident. That she had nowhere to go when the boarding money out. "I'm not a woman of poor character," she said. "Only a woman with few choix." "The affair starred," Thomas replied. As she turned to leave, he asked, "What's the baby's name?" "Grace," she said. That night, Thomas opened a box he had not touched in years, a ring, a lock of hair, a photograph of the family he had lost. He whispered into the care room, "He hired a widow. She has a baby with our daughter's eyes." The bells rang for midnight mass. Christmas had arrived, and Thomas felt something begin to thaw, slow and uncertain, deep within him. He did not lock Emma's door when he went to bed. He left it open just a little. Dawn came pale and cold, the sky the color of old metal. Thomas had been awake for hours, moving through the ooze with a restless energy he did not recognize. The turquoise sat ready on the counter, potatoes soaked in a basin. Everything was prepared, yet he kept straightening share and checking the stove as if order itself might steady him. The knock came just as the clock struck dawn. Sahab Hana stood at the door, ghas bundled claws against her chest. Saha looked thinner in the early light, shadows beneath her eyes showing a night without much sleep. Still, she held herself with quiet dignity. "Merry Christmas, monsieur, merci," she said. "Merry Christmas," he replied, stepping azid. "Please come in." The ooze seemed to shift as they entered, as if walls, law unused, were learning how to breathe again. Saha carefully unwrapped ghas, revealing a small dosi fast pink from the cold. The baby yawned, and the simple sounds tweaked Thomas out there than he expected. "I'll need to feed her soon," Saha said. "Of course," Thomas answered. "The parlour has a share be the fear." "Take all the time you need." Saha hesitated, surprised, then nodded. Thomas heard the soft creak of the rocking chair and the low murmur of a mother's voice. He stood alone in the hallway, torn between the kitchen and the parlour, aware that something fragile and important had entered his life. When Saha returned, ghas slept against her shoulder. "Where should he put her?" Saha asked. Thomas thought of the room upstairs and the cradle waiting there, but the words would not come. "The sofa in the parlour," he said instead. "I'll bring pillows." He watched as Saha arranged the cushion with practiced ease. Ghas was led down or the blue kilt from Emma's room. When Thomas saw it beneath the shield, his chest tightened. "I'm sorry," Saha said softly. "He can move her." "No," Thomas said quickly, then gently. "Leave her, it should be used." Saha looked at him with new understanding. "How long ago?" she asked. 5 years, he said. "Fave." "I'm sorry," she replied. The words were simple, but they came from a place of knowing. They moved to the kitchen and began their work. Saha handled the space with confidence, her awe quick and sûr. Thomas found himself falling and two step beside her, sharing counters and silence, the way he always had with Catherine. "You keep a feel ooze," Saha said while rolling dough. "Only lately," Thomas replied. "For today." "For today," she echoed. The ooze filled with the smells of roasting meat and baking bread. Thomas caught himself watching ghas sleep, her small chest rising and falling. Saha noticed. "She looks like Eam," Saha said kitly. "Mia's bar, same share when she sleeps." "What was his name?" Thomas asked. "James," she said. "James Bernard. He was a good man, not perfect, but good." Ghas stirred and Saha lifted her easily. Thomas watched the monsieur, remembering Catherine moving through this same kitchen. He had thought those memories were sealed away, but they lived just beneath the surface waiting. "He haven't had Christmas dîner here since they died," Thomas said at last. Saha paused. "Perhaps you were ready," she said. "Or perhaps you knew you could not carry it alone anymore." Grace's eyes opened then, gray, blue, and searching. They found Thomas standing in the doorway. The baby studied him with solan curiosity. Something cracked open in his chest. "Would you like to hold her?" Saha asked. Thomas hesitated only a moment. Ghas was placed in his arm, warm and solide, her small arm wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. He looked down at her and felt the cold around his heart begin to loosen. Dîner was ready be early afternoon. They set the table together using dish long forgotten. Too much food for 12 people and a baby, but Thomas understood now that abondance was the point. They sakitly unti Saha spoke. "Should we say ghas?" Thomas bowed his head. "For this food, for this day, for this company," he said slowly, "for what we have lost and what Hamer." "Amen," Saha whispered. They ate, speaking little, sharing more in glass than words. When the meal was finished, Thomas brought out a small wooden rocking horse. He set it gently on the table. "For ghas," he said, "when she's older." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said, "for giving us a place today. You gave me something too," Thomas replied. As evening came, Saha bundled ghas to leave. At the door, she hesitated. "Me room runs out in 2 days," she said. "After that, he don't know where we'll go." Thomas had known this moment was coming. "I have empty rooms," he said. "Ha, one, fait, tam, cot." Saha searched his face. "Ah, you sure?" "I am," he said. She nodded. "Welcome Friday." Thomas watched them disappear into the blue twilight. Then he turned back into the ooze and began preparing a room, not Emma's, but one filled with morning light. For the first time in years, the silence did not return. Friday came with a clear sky and a hard frost that turned every sound sharp. Thomas had been awake since before dawn, not from worry, but from pure pause. He prepared the guest room carefully, airing the blanket, setting a small table by the window, placing a lamp where soft light would fall in the evenings. The room faced east, just as he had planned, and when the sun rose, it filled the space with a gentle warmth that felt like pomise. Saha arrived just afternoon, a small trunk in one arm and ghas bundled against her chest. She looked uncertain, standing on the porch as if a Fedorofe might vanish once tested. "You came," Thomas said, and surprised himself with how much relief lived in the words. He said we would, Saha replied, though her voice carried a tamar. Thomas carried the trunk inside. Cass was awake, watching him with those steady blue eyes. This time, instead of pair, the sight brought something steadier, a kier resolve. The first days passed with Ka. Saha took the room and paid ha from the monnaie Thomas insisted or charging, though he kept the amount small. She cooked and cleaned without being asked, not as pem, but asabi. Cass became a pazas in the ooze, her small sounds filling space that had law been sealed. Thomas returned to routine he had abandoned. He read in the evenings be the fear while Saha sewed or rocked Cass to sleep. Sometimes they spoke of simple things, the weather, the town, the piece of flour. Other times they spoke of loss. Neve too much, neve too little. One evening as snow fell thick outside, Cass grew fissy. Saha tried rocking her, humming softly, but the baby would not settle. Thomas watched, then held out his arm without thinking. Mary, he asked. Saha nodded, surprise and trust mingling in her eyes. Cass quieted almost at once in his arm. She stared up at him, then smiled, a real smile that spread across her whole face. Thomas felt his breath catch. Emma had smiled that way. Open and fearless. She likes you, Saha said softly. Thomas did not answer. He could not trust his voice. Winter deepened. The ooze adapted. Thomas learned the small rhythms of Grace's days, the meaning of her key, the joy of her laughter. He did not try to replace what was lost. He did not pata, this shield was his. But he allowed himself to Ka, and in that Ka he found healing he had never expected. The town noticed the charge. Mrs. Calloway watched Saha and Cass with curiosity that softened and toa poval. The Havha nodded to Thomas one Sunday morning, a question in his eyes that he did not voice. People talked as they always did, but the words no longer mattered. One night as the fear burned low, Saha spoke and told the kier. "I was afraid when you offered the room," she said, afraid of op. "It can hear worse than despair." Thomas nodded. "I know you don't always anything," she added. "I don't want you to think we expect more." "I know," he said again, "and he don't expect anything either." What grew between them was not sudden or loud. It was slow and feel. Shared mornings, shared meals, shared responsibility. Trust built peak be peak. Spring cam lat bit it cam. Snow melted and tomud, then anto green. Thomas visited the cave behind the shirsh for the first time without dread. He brought wild flowers and stood longer than usual. He spoke kitly, telling Katine and Emma about the ooze, about Cass, about how life had found a way back inside their walls. When he returned home, Saha was in the garden with Cass on a blockette nearby. The baby reached for him when she saw him. Thomas lifted her easily now, without fear. "She's growing fast," Saha said. "She is," Thomas replied, "just like her mother." Saha smiled, not sadly this time, but with pride. That sume, Thomas repaired fast, opened rooms, and laughed more than he had in years. He did not forget. He did not move or in the way people expected. He carried his love for Catherine and Emma alongside the newborn forming and found that the heart could hold more than he had believed. One evening, as the sun set warm and cold, Saha stood beside Emor the Posh. Cass slept between them. "I think James would have liked this place," Saha said. "I think Catherine would have liked you," Thomas replied. They stood in silence. The past and puz balanced gently between them. No promise spoken, no declaration made, only the clear understanding that life had not ended where Grief had tried to stop it. Thomas looked at the ooze, os opti, now full of sound and warmth. He had hired a widow to prepare a Christmas dîner. What he had received instead was a cigar chasse at living, and this time he did not turn away. The years that followed did not rush forward. They moved with the calm patience of seasons that understand their purpose and arrive in their own time. Thomas never gave a name to what he and Saha became, and she never asked for one. The ooze did not need explanation. It learned them or its own. It learned the sound of Grace's footsteps as she learned to walk, first incertain, then sûr. It learned laughter again, filling rooms that ours held only echoes. It learned warmth that had nothing to do with fear or weather. Cass grew into a strong and curious shield. She loved the open fields and the quai moment be the window in equal measure. She followed Thomas wherever he went through farce and pasture, asking questions that carried more wonder than words. Thomas answered her slowly, carefully, as if each sentence mattered. He spoke to her about the Lord, about seasons, about patience. For a long time he did not speak of Emma. One afternoon, when Cass was old enough to notice detail others might overlook, she stopped in floor of the photograph or Thomas's desk. She studied it in silence, her head tilted slightly. Then she looked up at him. "Who is the little girl?" she asked. Thomas felt the familiar tightening in his chest, but it did not hear the way it once had. That was me daughter, he said. Cas looked back at the photograph, then at Thomas again. She has eyes like mine, she said. Yes, Thomas replied quietly. She does. From the doorway, Saha watched with her arm pressed lightly to her chest. In that moment, she understood something she had only felt before. Love did not divide what the heart could hold. It widened it. It made room where there had also been only pain. On the fifth Christmas, since Saha and Gas had entered his life, snow fell again on still water. It came softly, steadily, covering the town in white. The table was set as it had not been set in years. The ooze glowed with lamplight. Gas carried dish with feel seriousness, proud of the responsibility. Saha laughed when flowers scattered across the counter, and Thomas laughed with her, free and unguarded. When the meal ended, Gas climbed into Thomas's lap. She rested her head against his chest, warm and trusting. Outside, church bells hung through the cold air. Inside, the ooze seemed to pause Asif, holding the maman gently in its arm. You stayed? Cass murmured, already half asleep. Yes, Thomas said softly. He stayed, caught. Latte that night after Cass was tucked into bed, Thomas and Saha stood together by the window. Snow drifted down just as it had years before, but it no longer felt heavy. Do you ever feel guilty for being happy? Saha asked, her voice low. Thomas thought for a moment. No, he said. I think love wants us to keep going. Saha nodded. Her eyes shone, but no tears fell. Thomas never stopped visiting the cave behind the church. He brought flowers every spring and winter just as he always had. Now Gas came with him. She held his arm and listened when he spoke. And when they walked away, Thomas no longer felt like he was leaving the dead behind. He felt as if he carried them forward, woven into the life he was still living. The ooze that once held only absence now held mouvement and memory. Kiev and Gas lived together there, no longer at war. Love had returned, not as it once was, but as something deeper and stranger, shaped by loss and patience. And every Christmas after that, when snow brushed the windows and laughter filled the rooms, Thomas remembered the day a widow knocked on his door. He remembered how a baby's eyes reopened a heart he believed was gone forever. He had been wrong. Love had not left him. It had only been waiting.